Richard Chambers, President and CEO of the Institute of Internal Auditors. Welcome to another on my series on insights and advice. Today I am joined by Javier Faleato, the Chief Executive Officer of one of the IIA's larger and more storied affiliates, the Institute of Internal Auditors Spain, which was founded in 1983. Welcome, Javier.
Thank you, Richard. It's a pleasure being here.
Javier is also the chairman of the board of IIA. Did I pronounce that correctly?
Yes, that's fine.
An information technology and service company there in Spain. Javier has been the CEO of IIA Spain for 17 years. I sometimes feel like I've been at the IIA Global for a long time. I've been here for 11 years, but you've been there for 17 years and have just done a tremendous job in leading that organization. And so pleased that you're joining me today for this conversation. Javier, we've had conversations with a number of individuals from around the world. I don't believe that I've had the opportunity really to sit down recently and talk with anyone from Europe. And so much of the impact of this pandemic has been felt across the continent of Europe. I think we all agree that it's very important that the world not become complacent about the COVID-19. I guess I would ask, what is your perspective from where you sit of the impact of the coronavirus in Europe, and specifically on the audit, the internal audit profession? What's your perspective as some 4 or 5 months in now?
Yeah, thanks, Richard. Yeah, I mean, you're right. I mean, COVID-19 has changed it all. Europe was one of the first affected continents. Now this has changed. There's no exceptions in the world for this virus. As a general comment, and I think we'll probably go more in detail later during our conversation, I think internal auditors in Europe have reacted well. And I think they have been resilient. They have kept close to the audit committees, adapted the audit plans quickly. Well, sometimes it was more a swerve than a turn, right? But they adapted their way of working as well. But in general, I made a positive balance as a profession, right? From the IIA standpoint, I think we've tried to support them as much as we could. I think we've done a fairly good job, of course, with a lot of help coming from you, from Global IIA. And finally, if I may say, as a society, I think we still need to learn some things, right? At least in Europe, we see some relaxation, especially among young people, which might lead us to certain complacency, as you said, which is no good at all in this situation.
It's not good risk management, huh?
Yes, absolutely.
You know, I think a lot of times we think about health and safety. You know, we all practice risk management when it comes to our health and safety. And young people perhaps assess the impact if they were to get the virus as being relatively low, but what they're not anticipating is what that impact then is if they pass it on to someone else. And so I think that's perhaps what's going on, not just there in Europe, but certainly here in America as well. So any other thoughts on how COVID-19 has directly affected internal audit functions in Europe beyond the comments you made?
Well, of course, it has affected them very much. But I must say in a different way, right? In different ways, yeah. Because what I see is that it depends very much on the industry. You have internal audit departments on industries directly affected, like retail or tourism, which, as you know, is very important in Spain. In these companies, the organizational mantra was just survival, right? And then you have these other regulated industries, like financial or insurance. We're looking at the audit plan, not so many things have changed, right? Of course, they had to include new risks as cybersecurity or moratoriums, but more or less they carried on with business as usual. Consider just, for instance, that the European Central Bank did not ease at all its requirements on internal audit functions, right? So we have like two pretty different worlds with different reactions. But overall, as I said before, I can say I'm proud that we have very good professionals around, willing to adapt to extraordinary circumstances, sometimes working within the crisis committees, sometimes not, but at the end of the day, doing always a great job.
There's a lot of conversation about the potential second wave of this virus. Here, as you and I were talking earlier, here in America, I don't even really think we're through the first wave, but in Europe, I think there's an anticipation of a potential second wave that might be coming. What are some of the lessons learned from this initial wave of the pandemic that could be applied going forward, do you think?
Yes, well, I agree very much with you, Richard. I mean, here it's taken for granted that the second wave will come. And I tell you, I'm married to a nurse, so I have pretty good information about it, and we are expecting it. So yes, I think we have like important lessons learned. I would probably highlight four. The first of them would be like every risk is relevant, Pandemic is funny. Pandemic was in the global risk report of the World Economic Forum for 2 years, and yet it was just in a few risk maps, right? And definitely not at the top of the list, right? Still, those companies which paid enough attention to their contingency plans were capable to navigate through this better, right? Some say the work of internal audit in this pandemic should have been done some years ago. 2020 was a bit too late for some things, right?
Yes.
That should be the first one. Second one, I would say that traveling is not as important as it used to be. And recently I was talking to a CIE that told me that some years ago, they realized, they performed this analysis about the work they do. And they came to the conclusion that 50% of the work could be done perfectly remotely. 35%, it would be best to do it face-to-face, but if not possible, then remotely would be good enough. And then just 15% had to be on site. They did this in order to identify cost savings because it was before the pandemic, right? But it's perfectly applicable now. And also with the crisis we have ahead, cost saving is going to become very important, right? So we just need to make sure that we make auditing remotely as perfect as we can. The third reflection would be independence, right? I know firsthand that some internal auditors have been concerned about the potential loss of independence because they had to give a hand in second or even first line jobs, right? That was needed, so nothing to complain about, especially in these companies I told you before. But I also know that these people is concerned about this. They have done this analysis. They are very conscious about it and about the importance of not losing independence. And then therefore they are taking mitigating measures to prevent that, right? And maybe the fourth obvious reflection is that a more reasonable balance between office working and home working is possible, which will help reconcile personal and professional life in the tough moments we are living now, or we might live in the short future.
Yeah. I've always believed that in extraordinary circumstances, internal auditors should be willing to relax their view about independence so that they can preserve the opportunity to be independent in the future. If we don't roll up our sleeves and help an organization that is facing dire threats, if we don't do that, there may be no organization in the future that we can audit. So I tend to agree with you a little bit on that. Let me close out our question and answer session today by asking you a little bit about what do you think that this profession is going to look like in the years ahead as a result of this? Do you see any of the developments that we're experiencing that you think could be transformational long-term for internal audit?
Oh, yes, I do see changes. I mean, it's a difficult question because we have such an uncertainty around, right? But it's difficult. But if I am to choose some adjectives of the internal auditors of the future, I would definitely say they will be faster, right? I see that internal auditors now are moving faster. This situation has proved that the business cannot wait 2 months to get an audit report and then follow-up recommendations 6 months later. We sometimes are a bit slow and disciplined, and I believe that needs to change slightly, right?
You might have seen I don't know if you saw my video on that topic a few weeks ago, where I talked about that very topic.
Yes, exactly. In fact, Richard, I think it's probably a good time to read your book again, Auditing at the Speed of Risk, right? Because I mean, this something you've been telling us for quite a long now, right? I think the internal auditors would be more flexible. They will need to review the audit plans more often, even within the year, right? Because new risks are arising all the time and they are all interconnected. They will need to be relevant, and this is something I'm pretty concerned about, because to stay relevant, we need to become trusted advisors, and you know this very well. Richard, you've been telling us this for years. Yes. And especially now we have a huge economic crisis in front of us. So we need more than ever to be a trusted advisor to stay relevant now. Now it's time to help the organization in a very constructive way, trying to understand the situation the company is going through and trying to add value upon that, right? I was thinking, just to give you an example, some people have realized now that there were too many internal controls, even sometimes duplicated within the company, and inflation of controls is as bad as a lack of them, right? So we have to look at these kind of things because I think this is here to stay, and this is going to be a change in the internal auditors' mindset. And do not forget about assurance, and you mentioned this before. Some companies were in survival mode, and some people tend to think that internal control is a luxury or it's expendable in survival mode. Well, I think assurance and insight is now more needed than ever before, right? Yes. We've seen some relaxation in internal controls during this time. Segregation of duties was not taking place because there was just no people to do it, or the company was not prepared. Procurement of some materials did not follow the appropriate channels. I mean, think about getting face masks 3 months ago, where the market was completely collapsed, right? Yes. So now, as I said, we just can't go there, we can't appear there saying you did not follow the procedure, but still you can't ignore that either, right? So assurance is in our DNA, and yes, as I said before, we have tough times ahead, and we can't afford weakening the control environment.
Wow, very great insights there, my friend Javier. Thank you so much for joining me today. I appreciate everything you're doing in a leadership role there in Europe, and we look forward to continuing our relationship with IIA Spain in the future. Be safe, and hope the internal auditors there in Spain continue to understand the risks and challenges and opportunities that we all collectively face and have an opportunity to adapt to.
Thank you very much, Richard. It was a pleasure being with you. Thanks for inviting me, and we appreciate very much the support and the job you are doing as a global profession. So thank you.
Very good. I'm Richard Chambers, President and CEO of the Institute of Internal Auditors, and thank you for joining our conversation.